We have an amazing topic to start today, the conversation. It's called The Principles of Building and Implementing AI. And this is the part of the title that I love the most, with the humans at the center of it. For that particular panel, I'm going to introduce a good friend of mine. He's a senior director of software engineering in our credit card division, Jose Mingorance. Please come to stage, Jose. I can tell you, Jose, not only he's a creative technologist, but he's a power of change. And I know that because he worked with me in Capital One 35 years ago. But before that, we worked together also in Fannie Mae. And I'll tell you, he's always been supporting Hispanics in tech and high tech. So, Nacho? Thank you.
Yes. Can you hear me? Good. Well, buenos dias, familia. How's everybody doing? Good. Welcome again to Capital One and our beautiful nation's capital. I am Jose Mingorance, like Carlos introduced me. Thank you for your kind words. And today, actually, I'm originally from Malaga, Spain, La Costa del Sol. I think I've seen one flag in Malaga. So if you're here, please find me. I think I've seen one there. So I'm Jose Mingorance. Today, I have the pleasure to moderate an exciting topic on Capital One's principle for building, implementing, and scaling AI programs with humans at the center in a responsible and well-managed way. But before we start, I'd like to share that last week, Capital One was recognized as a top global bank in AI and the leading bank in AI talent by Evident Insights for the second year in a row. We are ranked #1 in talent pillar and #2 overall. So not only we're using AI for changing our business, but we're leading the way in the banking industry. It's a very exciting time to be at Capital One in this journey. With that, I'd like to introduce to the stage our Capital One's AI expert, starting with Eileen Ng. She's the VP of Software Engineering, Generative AI Program Team. Welcome, Eileen. We also have Miriam Friedel, VP of Machine Learning, Learning Engineering, ML6. And finally, we have Brian Bruce, VP Applied AI Research and AI Foundations. Welcome. All right, exciting topic. So I'm going to start with you, Eileen. How does Capital One think about building and scaling AI with humans at the center?
That is a great question, Jose. Can you hear me all? Yeah, okay. I just wanted to share with this audience that my husband, actually a little bit about me, my husband is actually Panamanian Chinese, and he grew up in Central America. So this topic in high tech, it really is near and dear to my heart. And he moved to the US when he was about 14. And so he's had a tremendous journey and required a lot of acceptance as well as change. And so for every single one of you, thank you for being here, and thank you for supporting the community and making it even so much better. Okay, so going to the question. How does Capital One think about AI from a human-centered approach? So Capital One, we are driven by our mission, right, in order to develop and deploy and design AI and ML in a super well-managed and responsible way. And the way that we do that is putting humans at the center, people first. It's so important. Now, we have noticed this trend with AI and these capabilities, and it's moving so fast, right? Rather than ignoring them, we want to embrace it. We want to be able to support our associates and meet them where they are. And so I think it's incredibly important as we think about what it means, like how can we, for our associates, accelerate, right? Amplify, help them leverage these capabilities in a way that helps them be the best that they can be and focus on our customers first, right? And help them be more productive in their journey. A couple of things that we think about as we go through this AI journey. One, it's incredibly important for us to make sure that we are starting first with research, experimentation, design, being able to build and learn and test, extensively test this entire process, because there's so much that's unknown. And by having all these these points where we inflect and think about where we can make a difference, where we can inform ourselves, that is a well-managed approach. And it starts at the very beginning with input and feedback. The next thing that we think about is how do we consider, like any other bank, Capital One has a robust set of risk management infrastructure as well as ongoing and rigorous oversight, right? There's a lot of governance before we introduce anything that is model or AI based out to our customers, out to business settings, right? So that's really, really important. I will also highlight that in the work that we've done, we found the best practice to be human-centered guardrails, right? Being able to leverage that extensive testing, having people in there, right? Considering all the different dimensions of what that looks like, and then being able to be the voice and make sure that we are focused on delivering the right capabilities for our associates as well as our customers. The last thing that I'll say is we are highly involved in just the industry as far as how do we think about human-centered AI innovation. And so that involves both the government aspects of it as well as academia. And so it is an entire spectrum. And so our chief scientist and enterprise head of AI, regularly engages with the federal government, right, academia across the board, just to make sure that we're thinking about well-managed, like the way that we approach the thought process with AI and that we're getting different perspectives. And that also includes our ability to engage with partnerships in academia, in industry, in the government, so that we are developing these solutions that help power goodness within America.
Thank you. So I'm going to follow up, Eileen, with another question then. What are some of the ways in which your team has mobilized Capital One associates around a common learning framework to infuse AI across business lines to create capabilities that everyone can use?
A great question. I think for Capital One, it is really embedded in our culture of learning, continuous learning for our associates. What's really important there is that we have a framework that we leverage in order to continue to train, develop, and teach our associates new and upcoming technologies. We've all seen the pace of technology is so fast, not just AI. And our ability to be upfront and in front of that really helps support our associates in the technical stacks that are being updated, as well as the components that we have to integrate with that are not necessarily like always ours. And Capital One has built an innovative learning hub, and we call it Tech College. And so Tech College has been leveraged by approximately 39,000 associates within our organization. We have things in Tech College that are AI focused. So we have about 200 AI courses. We have cybersecurity, cloud computing, a number of different disciplines. And so we highly encourage that culture of learning, because then that really builds on our ability to adapt and be mobile, be nimble within the company and the things that we develop and deliver for our customers. Now, externally focused though, we do a lot. So as some of you may know, in 2014, we launched a program called Capital One Coders. And I am really excited about this program because it really focuses on middle schoolers and how do we help middle schoolers understand technology, understand the critical thinking, the computational skills. And so we've had about 25,000 middle schoolers be a part of this program that we house. And over the past several years, we've seen such benefit and investment in this. And from a Capital One perspective, we love doing it because we have passion in volunteering and helping society. And we've had about 6,000 associates be a part of this journey. And they have volunteered about 150,000 hours, which is huge, I think, over the course of these years. And we really have a passion around helping and supporting areas like high tech, right? NSBE, which is the National Society of Black Engineers, Women Who Code, Girls Who Code, the Anita Borg Foundation. So just a multitude of how can we help with representation and the development of underrepresented organizations or groups throughout our local and national communities.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, I joined Capital One 2 years ago, and one of the things that wowed me was the amount of investment on continuous learning. I don't know if you know, but Capital One has once a month, we have something called Invest in Yourself Day, where it creates space for the associates to actually invest in whatever skill they want to go after. It may be tech college, it may be getting certified. Quite a bit of investment for sure. And AI is just the new thing that we actually doubling down on getting those skills for the associates. Cool. All right. Question now, Miriam, this is for you. What is your team's approach to building tools and capability to support teams across the enterprise?
Yeah, I love this question. And also, let me also say thank you for having me. Thank you for allowing me to be here and speak to you guys. It's really, really inspiring. So one of the things, I've been at Capital One for 4 years, and one of the things that I observed right when I got here is that data-driven approaches, machine learning, AI, are really just embedded into everything that we do. So I think we know in the last couple of years, as Eileen mentioned, the space has been moving so fast, but I think we are so grounded in good, data science, machine learning, engineering principles that we've been able to true back to that. We have machine learning and AI models in production across the company. One of the best examples of this, I think, is transaction fraud modeling. So I think we're all familiar. We go to the grocery store, we go someplace, we swipe our credit card, we wait a few minutes, and we take it out of the reader. And regardless of if it's Capital One or another provider, there's often a transaction fraud model making a prediction. Is this transaction fraudulent? Should we approve it or decline it? And it's really important to us to prevent transaction fraud because that has a real impact on people's lives. And even though we're only waiting at the credit card terminal for maybe a few seconds, there's a huge amount of engineering and machine learning that goes into supporting that and making that happen really, really quickly. And so it really takes a village to do it. We are a massive organization. There's tons of these models, and we really all have to work together. This talk, principles for building and implementing AI with humans at the center, these are the humans that build these things. And so as we continue to innovate, we're taking the approach, particularly in the AI space, of a platform-centric, enterprise-centric approach. And part of the reason we found that this works really well is being able to harness all of the innovation that happens across Capital One, and bring it together and build something where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So you all are in technology, you are talented innovators, you work with tons of talented innovators. We like to build things, we like to experiment, and we like to create. And so what ends up happening, particularly in a company as large as Capital One, is you end up getting all of these pockets of innovation. And because everyone's really excited and really building, you end up having some duplication. And so one of the things I think we've done really well over the past couple of years, and I've been fortunate to do this in collaboration with Eileen and Bayan, is making sure that, like, hey, instead of building independently, let's build together. And so we can take advantage of everyone's creativity and everyone's technical skills. And one of the fascinating things that I've found about this and working with my team is creating this standardization, creating a centralized platform. It actually doesn't inhibit people's ability to innovate. It actually enhances it, because enterprise teams can take on some of the aspects of making things more well-managed from an engineering perspective, allowing the scientists to really innovate and figure out what's the next best thing. But it's really all about sort of the humans at the center and working together in collaboration and communication to get these things into market and really serve our customers the best way we can.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, AI is a topic is being heavily used, and I've seen this in other waves of innovation and technology. It happened with Agile, it happened with DevOps. It's like do DevOps, and everybody's trying to do their own version. And to be able to scale, you have to have those frameworks, reusable framework standards, to make sure there's no snowflake effect. You get you in trouble eventually. So very key important.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, Miriam, I'm gonna follow up with another question. It's great you're building all these enabling tools, but how do you manage the challenging of building them in a very quickly evolving tech landscape, especially in the world of AI?
Yeah, it's moving so quickly. And I want to touch back on what Eileen said about a culture of learning at Capital One is really about investing in the people we have and enabling them to really learn and grow, because the field is moving so quickly. No one person can know everything. And so we really want to give our associates the ability and the opportunity to learn new things. We're looking for people who take a really creative approach to problem solving. And we all know and understand, like, we don't know everything. Sometimes we're going to make mistakes, and that's okay, because we learn from those mistakes and we're able to grow and innovate more quickly. I think it's also finding the right balance between building towards a destination state, but also trying to be as open and flexible as possible, so we don't incur a lot of tech debt, which will then inhibit us sort of moving forward. So it's a really, this is something I think about a lot actually in my day job, right? Is how to balance for current needs and where we are today with making sure we're sort of future-proofing a little bit, so that we don't end up having to do a massive migration in 5 or 10 years or something like this. But it's really, I think the talent we have here is truly incredible. Like, as a leader, it's very humbling to be able to work with people who are far more experts than I am in certain areas, right? And being able to learn from them and problem solve together. So I think it's really, you know, you could say crawl, walk, run, but I don't know if that's the right analogy. I think we really just have to iterate and communicate together.
Thank you. So I know, Aline, you mentioned a little bit of the partnership with academia. So Ryan, I'm going to ask you a question about that. Where have you seen the most value in partnering with universities to bringing outside perspectives to solve some of our most common challenging business problems?
Sure, thank you. And thank you all for having me. I want to echo the comments that my colleagues have made. You know, it feels like if you're following AI in the news, or you're working with AI within a company, or you're trying to implement it, it feels like the breakthroughs are happening at a mind-boggling pace, that they're getting better faster than you thought it was possible that they could be getting better. And you know, one of the things that I've come to appreciate, having worked in AI research for a number of years, is that the breakthroughs we see today are the result of research and investment in research that goes back 5, 10, 15, even longer numbers of years. And it takes sustained and concerted dedication to research to have this kind of pace of breakthroughs that we see now. Many people probably don't realize this, but the first research work that proposed that you could even train a neural network on language data was in the late 90s, early 2000s. There's a few different researchers who started looking at that. That's over 25 years ago. And so that early stage then sets up where we are today. But it's not just enough to have academic research, to have scientists working in kind of universities asking these questions and dreaming up kind of the science fiction future of what we can have. The real magic and the real breakthroughs comes when you start taking those ideas that have been incubated in these academic settings and start applying them to real world, very, very challenging problems. So the transformer, which I think most of us are now familiar with, which is at the heart of generative AI, was actually initially proposed not for generative AI, but for a different problem, for machine translation. So many of you might be bilingual. A bunch of you have probably used Google Translate before 2017. Raise your hand if you used Google Translate before 2017. Now, keep your hand up. No, keep them up. Keep your hand up if you would have relied on it for anything meaningful before 2017. No. It was terrible, right? As a product, it was hard to use, to get accurate results. If you are fluent in 2 languages, you could very clearly see that most of the time it got the translation wrong. But now, today, fast forward 7 years with the invention of the transformer to solve that problem, machine translation is, you know, leaps and bounds ahead of where it was even a decade ago. And it was the application of the research that we were seeing on kind of in an academic setting to that very specific product. How do we make machine translation good that birthed the transformer, which then led to GPT-1, GPT-2, GPT-3, and all of the further breakthroughs that we've seen in recent years. And there's a number of examples where research going back decades gets applied to hard problems, hard real-world problems that leads to the breakthroughs that seed the next generation of technology that we see. And so, at Capital One, we have witnessed this kind of path where things kind of start small inside of academia, then get applied to really hard real-world problems, and then we see breakthroughs, and then we can kind of feed that back to academia, that this whole scientific process that has transformed technology in the last 2 decades has seen. And so we've invested heavily in both aspects of this, working directly with university partners, building out both one-on-one relationships with faculty at a number of leading universities across the country, as well as more robust investments in centers within academia. We just launched a center at USC and another one at Columbia this year that allow us to have really deep and enduring partnerships with the people that are kind of thinking about those very early stage problems in AI and solving those early stage problems. But it's not enough to just, give universities money. You also have to invest in the applied research inside of the company that takes those ideas, that works with those faculty and tries to solve those real world hard problems, the kind that we have in financial services are some of the hardest that exist. And then, the kind of cycle goes back, because once you've created those relationships and that, open door between academia and industry, the ideas and the challenges and the breakthroughs that we face then get filtered back to the researchers that we work with, and that kind of starts the process all over again, and they think about things in a new way. And so it's been a really productive relationship that we've built over the years, and it's grown. It's not just working with professors; it's grown to include PhD students coming and working with us over the summer, throughout the year, and a number of other programs that we've set up to engage this broader research community.
Cool. Excellent. Thank you, Brian. Clearly, we have a lot of investment on internally, also with relationships externally. So no surprise, we are #1 in AI talent, right? And we are not only AI talent, but we are a technology-driven company, as well as a research organization. By the way, I don't know about Google Translate. I'm still having relationship issues with Alexa when I ask a question in English and the response in Spanish. Anyways. All right, so next question this is for anybody who wants to take it. We talked about rapid evolving landscape. As AI leaders, what are some exciting advances happening right now that you are watching closely?
I can go first, as my coworkers are thinking about this. So one of the things that growing up, right, I was debating on, should I be a technologist, should I be a doctor or a lawyer? Sort of like your parents give you the position of, do you want to be a lawyer or a doctor in an Asian family? And so I know, right? Limited options. And so I chose to be a technologist. That's why I'm here. But what I love to watch is the advances in science, right? Like I've been reading these amazing articles around Gen AI and how these machines paired with generative models can create these new materials, the ability to have new substances faster than ever before, where it would take armies of researchers and time, and you have these set of robotic arms that are just testing things based on like assumptions and research, and then people come in to validate it to see whether or not it makes sense, and the iteration and the experimentation is intense, but so powerful because it can accelerate so much goodness in the way that we think about materials that we no longer use, materials that we could leverage in order to create a better society, a better like ecosystem for our world. So I get super excited when I hear and see that stuff, because it's like, oh, this is really changing the world in a really positive way, with humans really at the middle of it. So
Awesome. Thank you.
Eileen, I want to actually double down on your answer. I love it so much. I am a recovering physicist. Yeah. I got a PhD in physics, but chose to leave the field in part for some of the reasons Bayan talked about, right? Like some of the innovation that happens in companies like Capital One is really incredible and making it practical and useful. But I did my dissertation on protein folding, so understanding how proteins fold and aggregate in different environments. And recently, when the Nobel Prizes were announced earlier this month, right? Like one of them was around, like from some of the founders of AlphaFold, right? Which leverages machine learning and AI to understand protein structure. And so to me, it's like mind-boggling sort of seeing these two worlds collide. So as Eileen, said, like what good can come of this, right? Because proteins, like in order for them to do something in our body or in order for us to, figure out different drugs that can solve terrible diseases, we have to understand the structure of these proteins. And so seeing the advances in this technology that make something tractable, which when I was in grad school, 20 years ago, was just not even possible. So I think, that to me is really, really fascinating. And then I think also for myself, one thing I'm really interested in is just sort of the taking, the intersection of research and actually making it into like products or robust software, because the process of doing science and the process of building enterprise grade software that can handle that transaction fraud, it's overlapping, but there are also really distinct skill sets. And so watching sort of that progression, I think to me is, and learning about it is really, really fascinating. I'm actually fortunate I get to do that with Bayan's team all the time. So yeah, that's what I think. That's what I'm excited about.
I think for me, I don't know, last year, though there was a lot of excitement around Gen AI, it felt mostly like a novelty. It's great. It can write a haiku, can tell you a joke. Like that's cool, I guess, but it's not like going back to, like, it's not solving a real problem that like millions of people are facing, or, it's kind of a toy. And I feel like, obviously that's how these things start, but this year, people are trying to solve real problems with it, and that's pushed the research, that's pushed the engineering quite a lot. We're seeing all these breakthroughs on reasoning and multi-step planning, and it's all very exciting because, in order to do real things, you can't just, write a little snippet. You actually have to be able to integrate these models and these capabilities into much more complex ecosystems. And so I've been mostly following, where is the broader research and industry going with planning, with reasoning, as it continues to try to solve, these really big challenges that we have in the world.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm come from the software engineering side, and it still feels like almost like another way of automation, for example, for a Copilot, right? And there's still a kind of a hesitation. Is this going to replace my job? Is this going to, and it kind of little bit kind of hesitation embracing it. But we're already seeing a lot of productivity increases using it. With more usage, more adoption is coming. But it's kind of a little bit of let me see if this is safe. Let me see if this is it's going to work for me. It's going to help me out. And that fear factor slowly is eroding, and we see more and more adoption on it. Well, thank you, panel. With that concludes all the questions that I have for you. So I'll open it up for the audience. If you haven't, maybe you can have time for a couple of questions. You get a microphone, or I can repeat the question. Yeah.
Hello.
Hey.
Thank you. So I have two questions actually. First of all, thank you for sharing. It has been very interesting. One question is from Brian, and one question is for Marianne. For Brian, you talked about trust on, from the trusting that the translation of what you were getting actually was good. What do you think that is required for Gen AI to actually generate things that we truly can trust, right? Because still it can generate lies. And it's so well articulated that you're like, well, I believe you.
Right.
So that's your question. So for Marianne can you share one example, practical implementation at Capital One of AI? And can you introduce some elements of bias that maybe was there that you guys have to deal with? Thank you.
So I'll start. The question's about how do we trust, what does it take for us to really trust Gen AI and the systems that we use? And, there's the straightforward ways, right? For many of you with software backgrounds, how do you trust a system? You test it, right? You test it really robustly. You think of all the edge cases and you test against all those edge cases. You build automated tests to make sure that when you change anything, you can see how does it change. You also build monitoring, right? Very robust monitoring and instrumentation. Those are kind of the table stakes, right? We're going to have to do all of those things for Gen AI because we do that for any piece of software. There's an added nuance with Gen AI, which is that its outputs are non-deterministic. Its inputs are non-deterministic and its outputs are non-deterministic to an extent, right? It's not as constrained as any general piece of software. And so there's a lot of research going into how do you build different guardrails around these systems to prevent from certain types of abuse, but also certain types of failure modes that we know are very, very common. So you can build guardrails at the front end, which prevent things being sent to the models, prompting them with information that, or prompting them with kind of requests that we think are potentially malicious. Similar, the way you would have like a protection against a SQL injection attack, right? But you have the similar kinds of protections that you need for Gen AI, and then guardrails on the output. So, when it's generating something, you can actually monitor it either with other types of controls or other types of models that then look at its output and say, is it doing something that we don't want it to do? Is it doing something that we do want it to do? And that's all, just on the safety side. So the safety is obviously one part of how you trust a system, and then reliability is the other part of how you trust a system. So one of the reasons why, using pre-2017 Google Translate wasn't because it was unsafe, but it was unreliable, right? You couldn't trust it to give you the right answer high enough % of the time to really use it. And now you can. And so that's the other thing, is for specific tasks, can you observe that it reliably solves that task at a high enough threshold that you'll continue to use it in a more automated setting?
I'd like to add on, Fine, to what you said too, is we do have a robust risk management arm that is along in the journey with us as we're developing these capabilities, as there's a ton of oversight, a bunch of governance mechanisms before we put anything into a customer or a business-facing setting that we apply those. So there's a ton of scrutiny, Capital One being a bank and other organizations like us have.
Yeah. And so I'll answer your question about current AI tools and capabilities. I'm going to speak a bit, I'm going to give one specific example and one general example, sort of piggybacking what Bayan said about testing things. And one of the things that I think is so interesting about this field is when we're writing software, we're writing libraries or whatever we're doing, we have to do, there's sort of normal integration tests and CI/CD, but there's also what I like to call, are you calculating what you think you're calculating? And that's something that we have to do across, is sort of foundational across all of the different ML and AI models that we're building, because if we are calculating the wrong thing or there's a mistake somewhere, that's going to have downstream impacts, and so we think about that really carefully, in addition to what Eileen said about the risk management process, which is actually a good lead into my second answer, is we have a model risk office who engages with us in this process. And one of the things that we need to do, and this is both in, for generative AI models, but also sort of what I like to call the classic ML sense, is it's you have to do a lot of experimentation until you get to the right model. And one of the things that you need to do is track those different experiments, right? And provide evidence for what you did. And so one thing that my team has built in open source is a tool called Rubicon ML. You can find it on GitHub. It helps you to track those experiments. I'll also use this as a plug. There's a ton of other amazing open source packages that we've built at Capital One. Bayan's team has built something called Data Profiler. So I think when we think about tools and we think about enabling these AI capabilities, a lot of it is about really robust testing. Are we calculating what we think we're calculating? And then putting these things out into the open source in collaboration, with our risk management practices to get, sort of the wisdom of the crowd.
Thank you. We can hear. So I'll repeat the question in case you haven't heard. I think it's in general, the question you're asking is how have the current roles evolved and changed because of the AI movement, adoption of AI? Is that the way? Okay. At Capital One. Yeah. Got it. Well, before I hand it off to the panel, one of the things I'm going to say that we say at Capital One is we are automating everything but the human creativity, right? When people think about displacement, we are actually, I don't know how many of you heard about DevOps term of toil elimination. A lot of the stuff we're using is for toil elimination, taking the mundane kind of tasks and accelerating development of high quality, but that's not replace the creativity of a human engineer. But with that, I'll just pass it to hear your thoughts.
I'll give a brief answer here because I think that's exactly right. You want to automate the things that people don't like to do to free up their time for human creativity that frankly can't be replaced. And I mentioned, when I was speaking earlier about harnessing sort of the power of the collective. So instead of having a bunch of groups working independently, you have one team building something out, where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And part of that is taking, I think Eileen and her role is a great example of this, right? Like taking the, some of the DevOps pieces and some of the just essential parts of creating and building a well-managed platform and automating those as much as possible. And so when I view how we can leverage AI in the same way, it's in that way so we can sort of unlock more human creativity. But I would love to hear from my co-panelists.
Yeah, I'll add to Miriam what you said. I think it's really important for us to build the skill of the AI muscle, right? And how we think about it in our everyday roles to accelerate, to help us make sure that we're elevating, right, our customer experience, the things that we develop and deliver for the products that we already have in the marketplace. I think to the SRE point in the way that I think about this new and evolving space, one of the things that I hear as far as toil is I have new people joining the team. I can't find the information that I need. How do I make that easier? And then how do we apply AI, ML to making that better? So then they can fly and have production incidents reduced and be able to fix bugs, implement more features, right, from a software engineering perspective. So really, it's for me, it's two things. One, it's how do we embed the knowledge so people feel comfortable about it and they can apply it to their everyday lives. And then how do we reduce the toil and increase productivity for our associates?
Cool. I think with that, we just so that we ran out of time with more questions. But first of all, I want to thank this amazing panel. Clearly, to leverage AI. Yeah, please. So wrap it up with saying, but leveraging AI is one thing, but doing it right at the scale that we need to scale it, it's a team sport at Capital One. And not only team sport internally, but also with the academia, research, and partners to make it happen. But with that said, thank you again, panelists.
Thank you, guys.